In the autumn of 1571, the Mediterranean is a chessboard of power. To the east, the Ottoman Empire rules from Constantinople to the Red Sea, its armies and fleets unmatched. To the west, the Spanish Habsburgs and their allies still control Italy and the western Mediterranean but are on the defensive. The Ottoman navy has seized Cyprus from Venice after a brutal campaign. Christian garrisons have been slaughtered or enslaved. Pope Pius V sees disaster looming. If Cyprus can fall, so can Crete, Malta, and perhaps even Sicily. He calls for a holy league to unite the fractious Catholic powers. After months of negotiation, an alliance forms. Spain, Venice, the Papal States, Genoa, and smaller Italian princes pool ships, soldiers, and gold. The aim is simple but dangerous: sail east and confront the Sultan's fleet head-on. The Ottomans, meanwhile, are determined to crush Christian resistance. Grand Vizier Mehmed Sokalu commands from Constantinople. At sea, the veteran Admiral Muezzinzade Ali Pasha leads a huge armada. The Ottomans believe they can repeat their success at Cyprus and secure their hold over the eastern Mediterranean once and for all. Yet the odds are not as lopsided as they appear. The Holy League appoints Don John of Austria, half-brother to King Philip II of Spain, as supreme commander. Though only 24, Don John is charismatic, fearless, and already battle-tested. He draws together Spanish tercios, Venetian sailors, papal troops, and rowers from every corner of Europe into a single force. The two armadas are massive. The Ottomans field about 230 galleys and 60 galleots, with more than 80,000 men aboard. The Holy League brings roughly 210 galleys, 6 heavily armed galleasses, and about 68,000 men. It's a contest of oars, cannons, and morale, on a scale unseen since Rome and Carthage. Everything converges at the mouth of the Gulf of Patras near a small fishing port called Lepanto, modern Naupactos, Greece. On October 7, 1571, at dawn, two civilizations stare at each other across the sea. Each galley is a world unto itself. Rowers, many of them convicts chained to benches, sweat and strain at the oars. Above them, soldiers stack barrels of powder and shot. Officers bark orders over the creak of timbers. Musketeers practice firing in volleys while crossbowmen tighten their strings. Drummers rehearse signals for attack and retreat. On the Ottoman side, Ali Pasha's fleet has anchored inside the Gulf of Patras. His ships are faster and more maneuverable. His soldiers, especially the Janissaries, are renowned for discipline. He plans to lure the Christians into the Gulf, surround them, and destroy them piecemeal. He is confident. The Sultan's banners have rarely known defeat. But Don John moves quickly. He steers his armada across the open water, forcing the Ottomans to come out and fight on his terms. As the sun rises on October 7th, both fleets spot each other. Trumpets sound. Drums beat. The sea becomes a living thing, oars dipping, flags snapping, sails furled. The Christians have one key advantage: their 6 Venetian galleasses. These enormous ships, bristling with heavy artillery on all sides, are positioned ahead of the main line like floating gun batteries. As the Ottoman vanguard approaches, the galleasses open fire. Cannonballs smash into the lead galleys, splintering decks and scattering soldiers. It's the first taste of what's to come. Meanwhile, commanders issue last-minute instructions. Don John orders the battle cross raised on his flagship, the Real. He rides the deck bareheaded so every man can see him. Priests walk among the soldiers, holding up crucifixes. On the Ottoman flagship Sultana, Ali Pasha unfurls the Sultan's green standard, a symbol that must never fall. At this moment, a tense silence seems to hang over the water. Thousands of men on both sides know the stakes. If they win, glory and reward await. If they lose, slavery or death. The Gulf of Patras narrows to a deadly corridor. In minutes, history will be decided. The two great lines now creep toward each other like walls of moving timber and canvas. Drums hammer out the rowing tempo. On every bench, the rowers' backs glisten with sweat as overseers pace with whips to keep the oars biting deep. Powder boys hurry along the decks, dragging kegs toward the guns. Officers shout to keep the bows pointed true. Don John rides the real forecastle, studying the Ottoman line through a spyglass. To his right, Doria's Genoese wing swings wider into open water. To his left, Barbarigo's Venetians edge toward the shallows. It is a risk. Barbarigo must keep the Ottomans from turning that flank against the coast. On the Ottoman flagship Sultana, Ali Pasha sees the Christian formation stretching like a great iron bar across the Gulf. He signals his center to advance, his right under Mehmed Sirocco to hug the Greek shore and outflank the Christians, and his left under Ulugh Ali to press hard on Doria. The galleasses fire again, booming thunder across the water. The forward Ottoman galleys begin to break formation under the pounding. But they keep coming. They know that once they're inside musket range, their superior numbers of fighting men can carry the day. When the distance has shrunk to barely a few hundred yards, the trumpets blow for battle. Priests on the Christian ships raise crucifixes high and give final blessings. Janissary imams call the faithful to prayer. Then, with a roar of oars and shouts, the two armadas surge together. At the heart of the line, the Real and the Sultana drive straight for one another. Cannon fire rips across the bows. Splinters fly. The Ottoman ship crashes into the Christian flagship head-on. Grapnels hook, boarding ramps slam down. Hundreds of Janissaries pour across, clashing with Spanish tercios in a frenzy of steel and smoke. Arquebuses crack at point-blank range. Crossbow bolts hiss. The decks are a brawl of swords, pikes, and shields. Don John fights in the thick of it, bareheaded, urging his men forward. 3 times the Ottomans drive the Spaniards back to the mast. 3 times they're hurled off again. Around them, dozens of galleys are locked in similar embraces. Cannon shots echo like rolling thunder. Smoke drifts so thick that men fight blind, hacking at silhouettes. Near the Greek shore, Barbarigo's Venetian wing strains to hold off Mehmed Sirocco's faster galleys. Sirocco tries to cut inside and roll up the Christian line. Venetian ships run aground in the shallows, turning into stationary fortresses. Barbarigo himself fights on the prow of his flagship, shouting orders through the din. Here the battle is hand-to-hand and brutal. Grappling hooks snare hulls. Marines leap across decks. At one point Barbarigo is struck in the eye by an arrow and mortally wounded, but his captains close ranks, rallying the men. Venetian and Spanish reinforcements surge into the gap, and slowly the Ottoman attack stalls. Sirocco's flagship runs aground and is overrun. The admiral is killed in the melee. The Christian left holds. On the opposite flank, Doria has stretched his wing outward to prevent being outflanked by Ulugh Ali. It creates a gap between his ships and Don John's center. Ulugh Ali pounces, smashing into the exposed inner edge. Several Christian galleys are captured, their crews cut down or chained. Doria wheels his ships back to close the gap while Don John dispatches his reserve under the Marquis of Santa Cruz to reinforce. In a swirling melee, Ulugh Ali's men fight like tigers, but the combined Spanish and Genoese counterattack pushes him off. With Sirocco dead on the other flank and Ali Pasha embattled in the center, Ulugh Ali orders a fighting withdrawal toward open water. Back at the center, the duel of the flagships reaches its climax. Spanish tercios storm across the blood-slicked deck of the Sultana. Ali Pasha fights on until he's struck down by an arquebus ball to the forehead. The Sultan's sacred green standard falls. A Spanish soldier seizes it and raises the cross of the Holy League. Seeing the flagship taken, the morale of the Ottoman center collapses. Many ships break off, trying to flee. Others are surrounded and boarded. The sea is now a chaos of burning hulks, drifting corpses, and shattered oars. Cannonballs skip across the waves. Powder magazines explode in fountains of fire. By late afternoon, the Holy League has destroyed or captured more than half the Ottoman fleet. The surviving galleys of Ulugh Ali escape east with the wind at their backs, but the Sultan's proud armada is in ruins. The Gulf of Patras is littered with wreckage. 20,000 Ottomans lie dead, thousands more are prisoners. 12,000 Christian galley slaves are freed from Ottoman benches. For the first time in a century, the seemingly invincible Ottoman navy has been decisively beaten. Although the strategic balance of the Mediterranean will continue to shift, Lepanto sends a shockwave through Europe. bells ring from Rome to Madrid. Poems, paintings, and sermons celebrate the Day of the Rosary. For the Ottomans, the loss is a bitter lesson but not the end. They will rebuild. Yet never again will they hold unchallenged supremacy at sea. As the sun dips behind the hills of Greece, the Gulf of Patras lies transformed. The smell of gunpowder and burned timber still hangs over the water. Gulls circle low, drawn by the grim harvest below. Splintered masts poke up from the waves like grave markers. On the decks of captured Ottoman galleys, Spanish and Venetian soldiers pull off chains and open the benches. Thousands of Christian slaves stagger into the sunlight, dazed and weeping. Don John's flagship, the Real, lies scarred but triumphant. Around him his captains tally the cost. More than 7,000 men of the Holy League have fallen, but the Ottoman losses dwarf theirs. Out of roughly 280 Ottoman vessels, more than 200 are sunk, burned, or captured. 30,000 Ottoman sailors and soldiers are dead, wounded, or prisoners. It is the greatest naval defeat the Sultan's navy has ever suffered. News races west faster than the surviving galleys. In Venice, the bells of St. Mark's ring for days. In Rome, Pope Pius V weeps when he hears of the victory, declaring it a miracle of the Rosary. In Madrid, King Philip II receives the green banner of the Sultan and orders it hung in a cathedral as a trophy. Ballads, tapestries, and paintings spread the story across Christendom. For the Ottomans, the blow is severe but not mortal. So Ali Pasha tells Venetian ambassadors later, "You came to Lepanto with your crusade, you cut off one of our arms, but the Ottomans still have another." Within a year the Sultan has rebuilt much of the fleet. Yet the aura of invincibility is gone. Never again will the Ottoman navy project power so deep into the Western Mediterranean. The victory also buys Spain breathing space in Italy and bolsters Venice's position in the Aegean. Strategically, Lepanto halts Ottoman momentum at sea and signals a shift in naval warfare. The heavy galleasses with broadside guns have proven devastating. Future Mediterranean fleets will evolve toward the sailing warships of the Atlantic. Psychologically, the win galvanizes Catholic Europe. For decades, the image of Don John of Austria standing bareheaded on his bloody deck will inspire artists and preachers as the embodiment of Christian chivalry. But the battle's legacy is more complex. It does not end the struggle between empires. The Ottomans remain dominant on land from Hungary to Yemen. The Mediterranean will still see raids, sieges, and counter-sieges. Yet October 7, 1571, stands as a rare moment when disparate Christian states set aside rivalry and achieved a decisive victory together. Even among the survivors, the memory lingers like a fever dream. One wounded Spanish soldier, Miguel de Cervantes, returns home with a maimed hand but a head full of stories. Decades later, he will transform his experience of oars, chains, and heroism into some of the greatest literature of the Spanish Golden Age. The Battle of Lepanto was more than a clash of ships. It was a struggle over trade routes, faith, and the balance of empires. And for one October morning it seemed as if the fate of Europe floated on the waves. The Holy League's victory did not end the Ottoman threat, but it broke the myth of its unstoppable navy and showed how cooperation and innovation could tip the scales of history. As you picture those galleys locked together under a rising sun, imagine the noise, the smoke, the prayers on both sides, and the thousands of anonymous rowers who lived or died unseen. History remembers Don John and Ali Pasha, but the battle was built on countless individual acts of courage and desperation. If you've enjoyed sailing back into this pivotal moment with me, stay tuned. Subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss it.